Napoleon Bonaparte once advised, take time to deliberate, but when the time for action comes, stop thinking and go in. In modern gaming, the strategy genre has split perfectly along this divide. On one side, complexity demands raw speed, reflexes, and real-time maneuvering, while on the other side, it relies on deep mathematical stats, real-world tactics, and thinking 3 steps ahead. Hello Generals, welcome back to MrBunalGaming. I am Mr. Bunal. Today we are putting 2 games that look remarkably similar on the surface, if you ask me, red and blue lines versus red and blue dots, into a head-to-head tactical crucible. We are pinning the minimalist real-time mayhem of War of Dots against the historically grounded, turn-based, we go mechanics of Lines of Battle. Now, Generals, before we jump into this, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel, MrBunalGaming. We are a growing channel and every little bit helps. Also, if you're on mobile, please consider hyping this video. That really helps get us into the algorithm, and I do appreciate every one of you. Well, Generals, at first glance, it's easy to dismiss War of Dots as a casual clicker, a glorified tech demo of simple shapes bashing into one another. Meanwhile, Lines of Battle positions itself as a purist's wet dream, a punishingly realistic simulator where elevation, orientation, and historical doctrine dictate every volley. But does the visual simplicity equal shallow game mechanics? Or does the fluid high APM, that's action per minute, chaos of War of Dots actually demand a faster, sharper tactical mind than the rigid chess-like systems of Lines of Battle? Answer that, we have to define what tactical depth actually means. Is it about how many stats you have to monitor? Or is it about the strategic ingenuity the engine permits? Well, Generals, let's find out. I already feel like this is going to be a little bit of a controversial video.
Do you want to know what it is?
As you may know, we've made lots of content with War of Dots, and we're just starting to ramp up our Lines of Battle content. We have many hours playing this and many hours streaming it in our Sunday subscriber series. So I want to hear from you guys as well. What do you think about Lines of Battle versus War of Dots? What is your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments below. Now, Generals, to understand War of Dots, you have to throw everything you know about traditional battlefield tactics and look at the macro picture. This isn't a game about single engagement, it's a simulation of a national front. And on this front, logistics are entirely weaponized. The in-game economy of War of Dots is brutally simplistic, yet entirely foundational to the real-time survival. Don't mine gold, you don't chop wood, you capture cities. Holding a city generates the passive income required to sustain the massive operational footprint of your dot army. The more cities you command, the larger the swarm you can support. But look at what happens when the front line cracks. Lose those cities and your economy just doesn't stall, your army actively starves. The game introduces an immediate punishing attrition mechanic. If your dots find themselves cut off from their supply borders or disconnected from the urban nodes that fund them, they simply start to dissolve. The micro-tactical elements here come down to real-time routing. War of Dots allows you to select and intertwine your cities, dynamically shifting production queues so that new units spawn exactly where you need them to plug that gap. However, the engine balances this with a brilliant tempo mechanic. When dots first spawn, they are fragile, weak, and completely unready for combat. They require immediate rest. And if you keep them on the cities, they rest and become fully operational quicker. If you move them a little bit off the cities towards the front lines, they will start to improve, but it takes much longer. If you push them into that meat grinder too early, they are easily wiped out as well. You have to hold them back a little bit so that the morale and the health fill up. Outside of the matches, there's actually a little bit of an economy too. The progression loop is entirely built around aesthetic customization, earning currency through victories to unlock new skins, and different dot themes, and even different wallpapers. There are no pay-to-win mechanics altering the baseline math of the dots. It's a pure symmetrical test of real-time multitasking, positioning, and raw click accuracy. Now, if War of Dots is a lesson in macro fluidity, Lines of Battle is a brutal confrontation with historical friction. Here, we step down from the Commander in Chief's map and look directly through the eyes of a frontline general. Where War of Dots limits its entire ecosystem to just two unit types, light dots worth 10,000 men and heavy dots worth 20,000 men, Lines of Battle explodes into mechanical complexity. You aren't managing abstract masses, you are commanding historically accurate 800 to 1,000 man line infantry regiments, dedicated cavalry squadrons, scattered skirmishers, artillery pieces, guards, lancers, all kinds of different units. Every single one of these units is governed by a deeper, interwoven layer of simulation. It isn't just about health bars. You have to track organization, which dictates how effectively a unit can execute a command, stamina, which drains rapidly during a forced march or a bayonet charge, and ammo, meaning a brilliant defensive hold can instantaneously collapse in disaster the second your men run out of black powder and cannonballs. The terrain isn't just an aesthetic background like the MS Paint canvas of dots. It's a physical player on the board. Forests and buildings block line of sight. Hills can block your artillery. Mud and swamps inflict severe movement penalties. Elevation gives you high ground modifiers that can turn a modest defensive hill into an impassable fortress. Consider how this alters the concepts of a defensive line. In War of Dots, terrain merely acts as a slight speed modifier. Light and heavy dots have different preferred surfaces, sure, but engagement still ultimately devolves into a question of who can throw more raw dots to break through the line first. In lines of battle, a master strategist can use a tiny contingent of skirmishers spread out inside a forest to completely halt a massive high tier enemy advance. Because the skirmishers are scattered and using the trees for cover, they are historically and mechanically a nightmare to dislodge. This to me is like completely makes sense, right? If you have a bunch of kind of sharpshooters scattered throughout trees, your cavalry is not going to be able to attack them, right? The horses are going to have a hard time getting through the forest. And even line infantry would kind of have a hard time maintaining that line with all those trees in the way. So that seems very accurate to me. And then there's the absolute holy grail of wargaming mechanics, a flank. In War of Dots, there is no true directional facing. If you attack a dot from behind, it doesn't take extra backstab damage. The only reason a flank works in dots is because you're surrounding it, turning the fight into a 2 versus 1 or a 3 versus 1 numbers game. The dots themselves don't care about the orientation. In lines of battle, orientation is life or death. Engine tracks every angle. Infantry column is charging forward and hits the right angle of an exposed enemy line, or if a cavalry charge catches a unit in the rear, it triggers an immediate catastrophic organization and route penalty. You can watch an entire 1,000 man regiment decimate an army 4 times its size purely because they executed a perfectly angled 45-degree charge. A cavalry charge gets caught in the open by artillery cannon fire. They don't just lose health, they panic, rout, and trample their way back through the lines. This completely shifts the core loop of the gameplay. War of Dots gains its tactical edge through high stress, real time management of an active front. It's a game of rapid adaptation, twitch reflexes, and immediate exploitation. Lines of Battle, conversely, forces you to think 3, 4, or 5 turns down the road. It asks you to accept tedious, methodical micromanagement of lines, ammo, and wheeling angles as a rewarding simulation of historical reality. To really understand which engine possesses superior tactical depth, we have to look past the menus and stress test these games using the exact same historical maneuver, the double envelopment. In the real world, executed by commanders from Hannibal at Cannae to Napoleon at Austerlitz. The pincer movement is the holy grail of battlefield tactics. But when we translate that classic maneuver into these two digital environments, we expose a fundamental divide in how these games are programmed to reward your brain. Let's start with War of Dots. If we strip away the casual aesthetic and look at the high tier meta, we uncover a fascinating truth. Encirclement is not just a tactic in War of Dots, it's the only real tactic. Because War of Dots operates on a macro national front scale, individual unit combat is basically automated by just running into each other. You cannot order a dot to form a square. You cannot tell it to fix bayonets. You cannot order a cavalry charge or a screen to mask your movement. Therefore, the entire skill ceiling relies on your ability to break the enemy's spatial supply line. No matter how you look at a War of Dots map, your singular objective is to cut off the enemy's dots from their home borders. The moment you close that circle and sever their connection to their supply cities, a massive hole forms in their operational capabilities. Denied their logistics, the isolated dots face instantaneous, compounding attrition. They don't just lose a fight, they vanish from the map. Every competitive match of War of Dots is a frantic, high speed race to exploit these logistical holes before your opponent clicks fast enough to plug them. In War of Dots, that cinematic sense of a desperate, localized defensive stand doesn't exist. If you are surrounded, the math simply deletes you. But when we switch over to lines of battle, the entire concept of a pincer movement shifts from a macro supply puzzle to a micro masterclass in spatial geometry. Encirclement here is a viable strategy, absolutely, but is only one weapon in a massive tactical toolkit. And crucially, an encirclement in lines of battle doesn't rely on abstract lines on a map. It relies on flanking angles, unit morale, and mechanical suppression. If you surround an enemy unit in lines of battles, they don't automatically dissolve due to a lack of supply. They are still a living, breathing regiment of 1,000 men with loaded muskets and a finite pool of ammunition. They will suffer a devastating blow to their organization and morale because they're being fired upon from 90-degree angles or from the rear. But if that surrounded unit happens to be elite guard infantry occupying a fortified farmhouse on a hill or in the forest, they can kind of like dig in and hold their ground and actively repel a completely mismatched force for multiple turns. Lines of battle allows you to execute a vast spectrum of real-world doctrines. You can stage a feint attack on the left to draw the enemy's reserves, anchor your center on a crucial stone bridge choke point, and send a hidden cavalry squadron through the forest to catch the enemy's artillery undeployed. Your victory isn't dictated by an economic clock or a severed supply border. It's earned by breaking the physical willpower, structural formation of the pixel soldiers standing directly in front of you. As we look at the state of both games right now in 2026, the contrast between their design philosophies becomes even more stark when you examine their development trajectories. Both of these titles are fighting for the attention of the strategy community, but they are moving in completely opposite directions. Let's look at Lines of Battle now. Despite being a highly niche, complex simulation that can sometimes make finding a quick match a bit of a chore, the developers are aggressively expanding their horizon. The game already boasts over 100,000 registered users and has quietly amassed over 50,000 wishlists on Steam as it prepares for a massive dedicated paid release. And they aren't just tweaking numbers. Lines of Battle is actively introducing entirely new tactical domains, including a highly anticipated naval expansion. They are taking their rigid, punishing line of sight and orientation mechanics and scaling them up to the high seas, where wind direction, hull damage, and sail management will add yet another layer of deep historic simulation. It feels like a project that is consistently building a roof over a rock solid foundation. War of Dots, on the other hand, is currently trapped in a frustrating cycle of structural maintenance. Don't get me wrong, War of Dots has an incredibly passionate, highly competitive player base. On any given afternoon in 2026, you can easily find 300 to 400 concurrent players active on the servers because the matches are fast and addictive. But the game is severely plagued by lingering netcode issues. Because the engine requires real-time tracking of your dots, interactions simultaneously across a global player base, severe server lag and desync frequently derails high-stakes matches. Furthermore, the developers are struggling immensely with map balance. A significant portion of the current map pool features deeply unbalanced starting locations, unit counts, giving one or more players an immediate and unearned economic or logistical advantage right out of the gate. While Lines of Battle is looking toward the future of naval warfare, War of Dots is still stuck in the trenches, trying to clean up its fundamental infrastructure. There's been multiple times, generals, where we have seen games unsync and freeze and disconnect in the middle of matches. War of Dots also has a naval portion, but it's kind of an afterthought and it really doesn't work. If you've been watching our live streams, you've been seeing us do unique subscriber maps that feature naval battles. So, generals, when the smoke clears and the dust settles on our comparison, we have to return to our ultimate question: which game has superior tactical depth? Well, the answer entirely depends on what kind of commander you see when you look in the mirror. If your definition of tactical depth is centered in real time crisis management, lightning fast cognitive processing, and pure mechanical adaptation, then War of Dots delivers a completely distilled wargaming experience. It strips away all the historic fluff. There are no cavalry charges, no ammo counters, no topography lines. It's just raw, unadulterated mass versus mass in a high speed logistical knife fight. It rewards the frontline commander who can spot micro hole in a line and ruthlessly exploit it in a split second. But if tactical depth to you means the ability to execute authentic historic doctrine, where your victory is a product of patience, terrain exploitation, unit composition, and thinking 5 moves ahead of your opponent, then Lines of Battle is the undisputed champion here. It doesn't care how fast you click a mouse, well, mostly because there are time limits. It cares about whether you understand the devastating physical reality of a flank, the defensive value of a dense forest screen, and the fragile morale of men standing under artillery fire. War of Dots is an exceptional test of quick wits under real time pressure, but Lines of Battle is the game that truly lets you put on the general's hat and master the brutal, brilliant friction of historic warfare. But, generals, what do you think? Are you a grand strategist who prefers the meticulous simulation of the lines? Or do you thrive in the chaotic high APM, that's action per minute, swarms of the dots? Let me know in the comments below. Again, generals, if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing to MrBunalGaming. I'm a new channel trying to grow, and every little bit helps. Also, please like this video if you haven't already. If you made it this far, please do like the video if you learned anything here. Consider joining my membership program. Members get first come, first serve access in our subscriber Sunday battles, and also featured in our videos. So, generals, let me know in the comments below, what do you think about this video? Do you agree? What is your favorite Lines of Battle, War of Dots, or some other game? Until next time, generals, keep your lines tight, watch your flanks, and I'll see you on the battlefield.